Hello guys, I'm John, I'm the fanboy, today trying to invoke not Elliot Alderson but Mr. Robot, in case you're wondering why I'm wearing these clothes. But yeah, welcome back to season 4 of Mr. Robot. We're at episode 2. I was quite thrilled and excited of the last week's episode. If you haven't seen that review yet, you can check it out right here. But as always, I'm gonna talk the first couple of minutes spoiler free in case you haven't seen the episode yet. But then I'm gonna jump straight into spoilers and discuss all the things that happened. Okay, so in general, I'd say that this episode is a bit more laid back compared to what we saw last week. It's a lot more personal. I thought we get a lot of interaction between Elliot and Darlene since something happens that brings both of them together, without giving spoilers obviously. But I liked it that we got to see some sibling interaction in this episode, and it got quite personal, and there was a moment in there where I thought, oh, this is actually really sad, or oh, this is quite sweet. There was a specific scene where I even had some tears in my eyes, but that might just be me because I'm an emotional person. But you know, there were a lot of good moments there. And we get some more background information on Elliot's whole plan and his whole network thing he's trying to work on. So he gets some info from another important character in that system, which leads to quite a lot of information, which borders to something that's almost a bit too much information. It's close to an info dump since it's at the very beginning of the episode, and it's a lot of stuff we're getting told, a lot of stuff we mostly don't know yet or haven't heard of yet, like a lot of development, a lot of history with like companies and people we have seen throughout the show. It's not like you don't understand it, but you have to listen very closely since it's a lot of talking. It's not quite 5 minutes, but you know, it's a lot they're laying on you this time around. We're checking in with most of the major characters, which is good. Like I said, we see a lot of Elliot and Darlene in this episode. I like that. There's also some stuff with Dominique, the policewoman. Some stuff there that was quite interesting because I wasn't quite sure what she was going to do after last week's episode. So we now see her decision on the whole Dark Army thing and what follows after she got threatened in the previous episode. So that development takes a step forward and it becomes quite interesting. I'm gonna say that at least. And again, this episode leaves you with the what the hell did I just watch feeling, because once again, this episode manages to leave you at a point where you just want to know what happens next. Like, again, it's this kind of cliffhanger, new info reveal ending where you're sitting in your chair or yourself or whatever, and you're just staring at the screen thinking, what the hell just happened? Like, I love that. That's what Mr. Robot is so good at, to just screw with your head, to make you unsure about everything you're seeing. And it's sort of a reveal, or at least the ending is opening something up that leaves you wondering, okay, this is a major thing, what are they going to do with that? And it's a damn good ending again. Okay, so that's it for the spoiler-free part. I'm going to jump into spoilers for this episode, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, turn the video off now. Okay, so like I said, I thought the information we got at the beginning is quite interesting, but it's just a bit too much, and I'm not sure if I like the whole idea of this group thing, because you know, it adds a conspiracy on another conspiracy, because we already have the Dark Army and White Rose, and now atop of that we have like a whole group of people that Price and White Rose, see, Price, I remember his name this time around, belong to. I'm not sure if I'm liking that, but we'll have to see as to what they're doing with this group. Like I said, I like that we see a lot of Darlene and Elliot in this episode, which is why I said it's a lot more personal since their mother died. That's some interesting development that their mother died, and I think it's a good reason to get the two of them together, which eventually culminates into them working together, which I'm going to address in a second. But yeah, I think it's good also because through Darlene you're now able to see what Elliot actually is like in his interactions. Like, we know he's antisocial and he keeps a lot back, but I think especially in his conversations with Darlene now we see how much he's holding back, how much he's keeping in. Like I said in my previous review, this whole thing concerning the death of Angela, I think he's keeping so much in. Like, I think there's something inside of him that's boiling, but he's refusing to show it, or he's refusing to acknowledge it. Even like she says, I want you to give a damn about the fact that one of our best friends has died, and he doesn't. And I love that you see this in this episode. You see how focused Elliot is on this thing concerning White Rose that he completely forgets everything else that happens around him to a degree that isn't healthy. Like, the entire episode I thought, oh, he's not doing too well because he's keeping so many things back, he's not addressing things, he's not acknowledging them. You think, this can't be healthy. Like, yeah, he's focused on getting White Rose, which is good, but there are so many personal things concerning Angela, concerning Darlene, concerning other things that he just doesn't address. He doesn't talk about it. Since he doesn't talk to us, the audience, we don't know what he's thinking. If he thinks about that stuff at all, or if he really does repress it, if he just keeps it back. And what I'm thinking is that a lot of these things, like especially Angela's death and all that, and probably also the death of his mother, like Mr. Robot says, which is another moment I'm going to talk about in a second, when he's told, this stuff happens. Do you even care? Do you even acknowledge this happened? And he doesn't. At least he pretends that he doesn't. But I like that you see in this episode that there might be more to that than Elliot is letting on. So Elliot and Darlene have some sweet and emotional moments. I mentioned earlier that there was a scene when I didn't straight up cry, but it was sweet/sad when they're in the bank and the deposit box is gone, and Darlene gets super upset about that, which I thought was a very powerful moment, especially since it's that moment when she says, do you even give a fuck about what happened? So I like that moment. And then they, or at least she wants to listen to the tape they found on this old thing of Elliot's that his mother had. And Elliot at first is like, no, I can't listen to that. But he leans in, and then you can hear the voices through the earphones, and it's a young Elliot and a young Darlene and a young Angela recording a tape for Angela's mother for Mother's Day. And I don't know, it just got to me. I thought, oh my god, this is so sweet, but also so sad, because, Angela is dead and they're not children anymore and everything is fucked up. And I don't know, it was a very sweet moment, which I think fits perfectly into this episode and the dynamic we're seeing between Elliot and Darlene in this episode, and this was just gorgeous. Okay, now let's step back for a second before we talk about the final interactions between Elliot and Darlene, which lead to this big reveal. Let's talk for a second about Dom, about the policewoman, what happens with her, because I thought that was quite interesting as well when we see her in the interview with one of the other agents, and she decides to tell the lie. She decides to tell them that he didn't work with the Dark Army, but with some drug cartel or something. And I like how they build up the tension, because you can see her being very anxious and nervous, and you're not sure, okay, is she actually gonna tell him that he worked for the Dark Army, that that's what's going on? Is she gonna tell him what is really happening? And no, she doesn't. She tells him something else. She tells him the lie she has been told by that weird woman. We see a scene later at the phone, the woman who does taxidermy, which is already creepy enough. Like, the entire scene when we see the lady in her taxidermy shop, she does taxidermy, and in the background you have some documentary report or something on the murders and Charles Manson or something, and then a lady comes in who just slaps her dead dog on the counter. Like, this entire scene, perfect creepiness again, and the lady plays it very like very straight, very nonchalant again, and I love her asking. I love how she's. What do you mean by sure? How sure are you? Like the way she asks, you just know something's not quite right there. And then later in the episode, when they're like, when Dom gets a text and it just says, "I'm so sorry about your colleague." For a second, I thought, oh no, the colleague who's sitting right next to her is gonna die now. Didn't happen though. Something else happened. The guy she had the interview with earlier died. Apparently, he has committed suicide, which obviously did not happen. Because then Dom gets a text and it said 99.9% isn't good enough. Let's aim for 100% sure next time. And I thought, oh my god, this woman, this weird taxidermy Dark Army woman, why is she so intimidating and so creepy, and yet she looks so ordinary and nice even? Like, that's such good writing because you're constantly on edge, and again it shows you what the Dark Army is capable of, and you never know what they will do. And even Dom doesn't know, okay, what do I tell them? What can I tell them? What can I tell anyone? Like, even if she does the Dark Army's bidding, someone ends up getting killed she talked to. Like, this is so tense and I absolutely love it. Okay, so let's jump to the last couple of minutes of this episode. Elliot and Darlene pick up their mother's ashes and they have a conversation, and eventually it ends up with Darlene and Elliot letting each other in, basically, and Darlene decides, okay, she wants to work with him in order to take down White Rose, which I think is a good story development that this happens, because Elliot can't keep doing this on his own, and it's a good way to keep the two characters together, to have Elliot interact with someone, and that way we also have Darlene in her own thing, which I think is good. That way we get to see more of her, and I like the interactions between them. But I also got scared because, just like Elliot, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. Like, I'm pretty sure something is going to happen to Darlene and or Elliot at some point because they're working together, or because Darlene discovers or does something. I don't know. I'm pretty sure something is going to happen there. Like, it's Mr. Robot. Not everything is gonna be nice all the time, and most of the time when you think, oh, this is a cool development, this is pleasant, then they completely ruin it the next minute. And this is what I think is going to happen. Like, something bad is going to happen, and then only a couple of minutes later they actually already kind of do it. When Darlene says, I told you about Vera coming back, which, by the way, I completely forgot about him. Like, when he popped up in the previously on Mr. Robot, I was like, oh shit, that wanker was still around. Oh yeah. And I remember how scared of him I was in the first season because he was nothing but trouble. And I don't want him around anymore. And then Darlene says, I told you Vera was around, and Elliot completely flips out. I'm like, yeah, good reason to freak out, yeah. But then he thinks, okay, Darlene didn't talk to me, like my version, she didn't talk to me, so he thinks Mr. Robot screwed him over. Mr. Robot has been talking to us, the audience, throughout the episode. Again, just as I thought in the previous episode, this is continued, that it's Mr. Robot talking to us, not Elliot talking to us. So obviously Elliot now thinks, oh, Mr. Robot once again has screwed me over. He didn't tell me what he has been told by Darlene, namely that Vera is back. And he confronts him, and Mr. Robot has been trying to, like, calm him and ease him throughout this episode. He was the one who was like, kid, your mother just died, take a step back, take it in. I like his role in this episode, but when Elliot freaks out on him, you can see him immediately going, she didn't tell me this. You can trust me, she didn't tell me this. And this is when you realize, is there another personality Elliot and not even Mr. Robot knows of? Like, what the hell? Like, the episode ends on, I'm not even quite sure what this is supposed to be, like a dream sequence, or inside Elliot's head maybe, or something. Like, you see him, I'm not even sure if it's him. It's a kid who sits in the office at E-Corp we saw at the end of the very, very first episode where Tyrell talked to Elliot. We see him in that office. He sits in a chair, just spins around, and Elliot's mother comes in. And she says, you have to get out of the chair, we're not ready yet, we're waiting for someone. And the kid asks, oh, are we waiting for Elliot? No. Mr. Robot then? No. And the kid asks, well, who are we waiting for? And Elliot's mother says, the other one. And then she takes the kid and they leave the office. And you can see what I thought was quite interesting because, I don't know, in Mr. Robot almost everything means something. You can see in the office, when the kid leaves the chair, the desk he was sitting at has 4 chairs. And you think, okay, he just sat in one, we don't know. I don't know if it was small Elliot, if it was kid Elliot. Probably, but then also was a bit weird that he said Elliot, like in a third person. And then, like, there are 4 empty chairs. Like, we had the kid, then we know there's Elliot, and we know there's Mr. Robot. There would be 1 free seat. And just like the mother said, the other one. So, I mean, the most obvious conclusion now is that there is another personality. Which, and it, I mean, would make sense because, as far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, because people with dissociative identity disorder usually don't just have one other personality, like they have a bunch of personalities, so it would make sense that Elliot maybe has another one he's not even aware of. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe he's been hallucinating something again as well, maybe. I don't know, I have no idea who this other personality could be. I remember that back in the, I think it was season 2 finale, I remember thinking then that Tyrell might be another personality because we haven't seen him the entire show, like back in season 2. And he only talked to Elliot, and even Elliot thought he was going crazy. Even Elliot thought, okay, is this guy real? And, like, I don't know, at the time I thought, okay, he seems to be the real deal because he talked to Angela on the phone. But, you know, this is Mr. Robot, we never know. So, maybe my old Tyrell's not a personality theory comes back. Could be. Maybe Darlene is another personality. I don't know, like, the only thing we've seen her doing, apart from being with Elliot, is, like, throwing this party in the very first episode, but, I don't know. Like, I don't know, either it's someone we have already seen, or at least someone who has already been mentioned, or it's going to be someone completely different. And I do want that to be another personality. That would be so interesting. It would be such a good twist. And I mean, that's what they're basically setting up. This is what they're setting up. Like, because Darlene says, I told you. Like, and she knows what Elliot looks like. So, there can only be 2 conclusions to this. Either there is another third personality Darlene to talk to and that Elliot doesn't know about, or Darlene is the other personality and she tells Elliot, I told you about this, and just Elliot doesn't remember. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I don't know. I want to know. I'm super excited, and I just love the show for once again being able to end this on such a what the F note that you just have to know what happens next. Okay, so to wrap this whole thing up, once again, brilliant episode. I like that it's a bit different from last week's episode, like it's a bit quieter, it's a bit more personal. I think that's good. The only criticism I have is like the info dump we saw at the beginning of the episode, but I guess that's necessary to a certain degree. I like the interactions between Darlene and Elliot. I like that we have Darlene now on the fight with against White Rose. And like I just said, what they're setting up with, that there might be another personality, or at least that there's something, once again, going on in Elliot's brain we don't know about. I love that, and yeah, definitely looking forward to next week. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the second episode of season 4 of Mr. Robot. What are your thoughts on it? Put something down in the comments below. Maybe give a spoiler warning if you talk about any big issues. But yeah, do tell me what you thought in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.